I stood in my own living room staring at the text on my phone like it had been dipped in acid. Don't bother coming home. The locks are changed. The kids don't want you. It's over. No explanation. No warning. Just cold dismissal after 3 tours overseas after years of carrying nightmares so my family wouldn't have to. I'd survived mortar fire and ambushes in places most Americans couldn't point to on a map. But this was the bullet that hit deepest. I gave everything for them, and in return I got erased like a smudge on glass. My hands shook. My heart didn't. I replied with 2 words: as you wish. Then I made a single call to the one person who could make sure this wouldn't end the way she thought. And within 24 hours, the calls started coming in, begging, pleading, threatening. But it was too late. I wasn't just coming home. I was taking back everything. Before we dive into today's story, take a moment to share where you're tuning in from. We love seeing how our stories connect people from all around the world. Your comments and thoughts bring this community to life, and we're so grateful to have you on this journey with us. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Now, grab a cozy seat, maybe a cup of coffee or tea, and prepare yourself for a tale that will captivate your heart from beginning to end. Let's begin. When I stepped onto the front porch of my own home after 12 months deployed, I expected my daughter's hug, my son's laugh, maybe even a kiss from the woman who once whispered forever against my skin. Instead, I got a text. Don't bother coming. The locks are changed. The kids don't want you. It's over. No explanation, no conversation, no warning. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering above the keyboard. My heart didn't race, no. It dropped. Like a stone into water, slow and cold. I tried my keys anyway. They didn't fit. My name wasn't on the doorbell anymore. The new one read, Sabine K. Just like that, I was erased from the house I paid for, from the family I fought to come home to. I stood there in uniform duffel bag slung over my shoulder, heart thudding like I was still in the combat zone, except this time the enemy was inside my own house, and I wasn't even allowed through the door. I didn't pound the door. I didn't yell. I just stared at that damned lock, knowing the code had been changed not just on the door, but on my entire life. I replied with 2 words, as you wish. Then I turned, walked down the steps, and made one call to the only person I trusted anymore. Before we dive into today's story, take a moment to share where you're tuning in from. We love seeing how our stories connect people from all around the world. Your comments and thoughts bring this community to life, and we're so grateful to have you on this journey with us. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Now grab a cozy seat, maybe a cup of coffee or tea, and prepare yourself for a tale that will captivate your heart from beginning to end. Let's begin. Raina Tran answered on the first ring. Say the word, she said. That was it. No hello. No how are you. She knew. I'd called her once before after my second tour, when Sabine accidentally drained our savings into a wellness startup that dissolved within months. I let it go then. I told myself marriage was hard, that reintegration was messy, that maybe I just didn't understand civilian life the way she did. But this wasn't misunderstanding. This was surgical. Planned. War. I need the full package, I told Raina. Custody, property, finances, everything. Understood, she said, without pause. Meet me in the office first thing. Bring every document you've got. I caught a ride share to a hotel 20 blocks away. I didn't check into the fancy ones. I chose the kind where the receptionist barely looked up. I didn't want apologies. I wanted silence. That night I didn't sleep. I laid there in my uniform pants, belt still on, and stared at the ceiling. Ran the tape in my head. Every cold silence before deployment. Every girl's weekend with vague return dates. Every time she insisted on handling the kids' school paperwork because I was too busy defending the country. She had been preparing for this. I'd just been too loyal to see it. By dawn, I was outside Raina's Soho office. Downtown buzzed like always, polished and indifferent. She buzzed me up already holding a coffee black, just how I took it. She didn't waste time. She filed for full custody yesterday. Raina said, eyes scanning her screen. She's moving fast. She wants emotional chaos from you. She's going to be disappointed, I said, but I felt the tremble in my jaw. Raina looked up. That's exactly the tone we keep. Controlled. Strategic. We respond with facts, not fire. I nodded. So what now? First front is your children. She's built a narrative likely about abandonment. We have to undo it carefully. Leo was 13, a teenager overnight. Estelle was 10, and soft-hearted when I left. They used to race to the window every time I returned from the base. Leo called me sir as a joke. Estelle would ask for ice cream at odd hours just to sit on my lap while we watched cartoons. Now nothing. Not a single returned message. She told them I left. I said quietly. That I didn't want them. She left a trail, Raina replied. They always do. I took a cab back to my old block that afternoon. Not to fight. Just to see. The brownstone hadn't changed. Still perfectly trimmed hedges. Still the wind chime. Sabine hated that I refused to take down. I stood across the street and waited. Estelle didn't show, but Leo did. He stood by the window for half a second, just long enough for our eyes to meet. He didn't smile, didn't frown. He just closed the curtain. I stood there for another minute, not because I thought he'd come back, but because I needed to feel the pain fully. I needed to absorb it like armor. Then, I turned around. And for the second time in 2 days, I walked away from the home I built. This time I didn't look back. The next morning I stood across the street from the brownstone again. This time I wasn't just passing by, I was watching, observing, waiting. I'd spent the night studying everything Raina had prepared. Custody laws, financial disclosures, visitation precedents. It was like prepping for a mission, except this wasn't enemy territory overseas. It was a war zone made of marble countertops, curated Instagram posts, and forged emotional narratives. At 7:41 a.m., the front door opened. Sabine stepped out first, wearing a soft beige trench coat, flawless makeup phone in hand. Behind her came Estelle, dressed like a doll from a lifestyle magazine. Her hand was clasped tightly in Sabine's, her eyes down. Leo followed, shoulders slouched, hoodie up. He didn't look at his mom or his sister. He just walked behind them like a ghost of the boy I knew. I felt a sharp twist in my chest. Not anger. Not yet. Just loss. Pure, unfiltered loss. A black SUV pulled up. The driver loaded their backpacks while Sabine ushered them in. She never looked back, not once. Not toward the street, not toward the home she'd hijacked. Her performance was polished. From this angle, no one would question her. She looked like the devoted mother doing it all alone. Raina was right. She was already building her case not in court, but in their minds. Later that morning, I sat across from Raina in her glass-walled office, watching the city buzz below us. She's conditioning them, I said flatly. She's had a whole year without me to rewrite everything. Raina didn't blink. And you're going to counter that. Slowly. strategically. We'll start by filing for a temporary custody evaluation and requesting immediate supervised contact. It gives you a legal pathway to engage while we prepare the deeper case. She's going to spin it, I muttered. She'll say I'm unstable. Distant. Maybe even dangerous. She might, Reyna admitted. But she doesn't have your service records. I do. You're a decorated officer. No disciplinary issues, no incidents, stable housing, clean financials, and most importantly, you never relinquished custody. She slid a folder across the table. Also, there's this. Inside was a copy of a lease. Sabine's name and another man's Julien Levesque. Who the hell is that, I asked. Real estate developer, based in Boston, recently expanded to Manhattan. No public acknowledgement of their relationship, but several neighbors reported him spending the night during your last 3 months of deployment. I closed the folder. My jaw was tight. I hadn't even had time to process the betrayal before it already had receipts and a name. So she moved him in, I said almost to myself. Unofficially. But yes, likely started before she told you it was over. They've been seen attending charity functions together. He donated to your kid's private school under a family foundation last winter. I exhaled slowly. She's been planning this for a while. Yes, Reyna said, which makes her sloppy. People who plan that long think they're untouchable. By noon, we filed the first round of motions. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that would spook her yet. Just enough to let her know I was alive. Present. Watching. That evening, I received my first call from Leo in nearly a year. It was short, stiff, polite. Hey, he said. His voice was deeper than I remembered. Mom said I should tell you. You don't have to come to my game this weekend. It's not a big deal. She said that I asked. A pause. Yeah. Do you want me there? Another pause. I don't know. I guess. My throat tightened. I'll be there, okay? And not because she said I could, because I'm your father. He didn't respond right away. Okay. Click. But it was something. A crack in the curtain. Saturday arrived, and I showed up at his soccer game early. I stood alone by the chain-link fence wearing civilian clothes. No uniform, no statement. Just a man trying to be seen by his son. Sabine arrived 20 minutes later, sunglasses on latte in hand. Julien was with her. He was tall, tan, expensive-looking. The kind of man who wore designer sneakers to a kid's soccer field. His hand lingered too long on Sabine's lower back. She made sure I saw it. I didn't flinch. Leo barely glanced my way during warm-ups. But Estelle spotted me. She didn't smile, but her eyes held me for a long second. Then she whispered something to her mother. Sabine looked up, eyes sharp, lips thin. She leaned into Julien, whispered something, then started walking toward me. I braced myself. You weren't invited, she said low and controlled. I don't need an invitation to watch my son play soccer. You think showing up now makes up for being gone all the time? I kept my voice steady. You knew where I was, every deployment, every mission. And who chose that life, she snapped. Who kept choosing it over us? I glanced toward the field. He still looks like he loves the game. Don't twist this into a redemption arc, she hissed. You're not a hero here. Not anymore. I didn't answer. Because I wasn't there to argue with her. I was there to reclaim my place. Slowly. Strategically. Just like Reyna said. Later that night, I checked my phone. A message from Estelle this time. Hi, Daddy. I saw you at the game. I miss you. 5 words. I stared at that text until the screen dimmed. Then I replied, I miss you too, baby girl. More than you know. On Monday, Reyna called with an update. Julianne had recently been named in an ethics review tied to shady real estate practices in Boston. Nothing confirmed, but enough smoke for a subpoena. "We're going to use it," she said. "Not now, but soon." "He's in her house," I said, "around my kids. And if his reputation falls apart, Sabine's stability as a guardian goes with it. We don't need to attack. Just let him implode." My instinct was to act, to confront, to protect my kids with force if necessary. But Raina kept me grounded, measured, focused. "We don't burn her at the stake," she said. "We let her light the match herself." A week later, I got invited to a parent-teacher conference through the school, not Sabine. She hadn't bothered to remove me from the academic contact list. A small oversight, but it meant I still had legal standing. At the meeting, Estelle smiled at me for the first time in months. "Daddy, did you see my art on the hallway wall?" she asked. "I did," I said. "You're incredible." Sabine showed up 10 minutes late, visibly irritated to see me. Julianne wasn't with her this time. Maybe that was on purpose. Maybe not. But I saw the shift. I saw Leo glance at me and not look away. I saw Estelle run to me before leaving. And I saw Sabine watching it all, lips pressed so tight they disappeared. Raina was right. The war was psychological. And now I wasn't losing ground. I was reclaiming it. I didn't expect the email from the school counselor. At least not so soon. Subject line: Leo's emotional adjustment, requesting parental session. The body of the message was carefully worded, polite, neutral, but threaded with quiet urgency. Apparently, Leo had shown signs of emotional withdrawal, lack of social engagement, and a sharp drop in participation. The counselor, Ms. Ramsey, suggested both parents attend a session to support Leo's well-being during this period of transition. Sabine hadn't told me anything. No surprise. But the school had. And legally they had every right to involve me, so I confirmed my attendance within 5 minutes. Raina called me the next morning. "You know what this is, right?" she asked. "Leo needs help," I said. "Of course. But Sabine's going to spin it. She's going to try and frame this as a result of your sudden re-entry unstabilizing their home environment." I exhaled through my nose. So what do I do? Stay calm. Stick to the facts. You are a father expressing concern, not a soldier entering a battlefield. Be warm, honest, measured. And Sabine, she'll overreach. She always does. That's what gives us leverage. The conference room at the school was small, with faded carpet and a tissue box in the center of the table like it was prepared for grief. Ms. Ramsey sat with a notepad, offering a gentle smile. Sabine walked in 5 minutes late, designer heels clicking. Her tone was all honey and gloss. "So nice to see you again," she said, looking past me. "Likewise," I replied without rising. She took the seat across from me. Didn't acknowledge me, not really. But I noticed her nails were done, her makeup flawless. Even in a crisis, the image had to be perfect. Ms. Ramsey began softly. "Leo's been having some trouble adjusting. He's quieter, less engaged. Not disruptive, but muted." Sabine leaned forward. "That's understandable. His father reappeared without warning after over a year. We've been through a lot of transition. I didn't react. I let her plant the seed." Ms. Ramsey turned to me. "And what has the reconnection been like from your perspective?" I kept my voice steady. "Leo's guarded, but he reaches out. He called me last week on his own. I showed up to his game. I've respected all boundaries, but I'm also not invisible." Sabine's jaw ticked. "It's more complicated than that." I'm sure it is, I said. But I'm here, and I'm not leaving again. There was a silence that settled in the room like fog. Ms. Ramsey nodded. Stability is key. For both parents to be consistent, present, and open to Leo's emotional needs. Sabine smiled thinly. As I've always been? I didn't take the bait. Instead, I said, then let's give him what he needs, both of us. Even if we can't stand each other, we owe him that. It was the first time Sabine didn't have a ready retort. Her lips parted slightly, then closed again. A pause. A crack. After the meeting, I waited in the lobby while she retrieved Leo. When he appeared, his backpack dragging on one shoulder, he looked at me for a beat longer than usual. Hey, kiddo, I said, cautious. He nodded. You're coming to my next game, wouldn't miss it. He gave me a half smile before heading out with Sabine. Small victories. That night, Raina and I went over the next phase. We need to start pulling character witnesses, she said. Teachers, neighbors, anyone who can confirm your consistent involvement. You're already on solid footing, but if she goes for full custody, we want the foundation airtight. She's going to fight dirty, I said. I can feel it. Raina shrugged. Good. The messier she gets, the more she exposes. What about Julian? She smirked. Funny you ask. Raina handed me a report, photos, financial statements, and excerpts from a whistleblower claim. Julian's firm had been accused of predatory development tactics, kicking out low-income residents in Boston by exploiting zoning loopholes. He'd publicly denied involvement, but emails and internal memos suggested otherwise. This is gold, I said. It's leverage, she corrected. But only if we use it right. We can't leak it ourselves. We wait. Let a journalist do the dirty work. 2 weeks later, a news story broke: Levesque Holdings under fire for displacement scandal. The article was careful, no outright accusations, but the implication was clear. Julianne's name was now radioactive. The next morning, Sabine called me. I hadn't heard her voice in months outside of court-ordered mediation. Are you proud of yourself? She spat. I said nothing. You had this planted, didn't you? I didn't plant anything, I said. I read the news like everyone else. You think this helps your case? No, I said calmly. I think it hurts yours. A silence. Then the click of disconnection. I stared at my phone pulse, steady. Then I texted Raina. She's rattled. That Friday I arrived at the soccer field early again. Leo played defense now, steady, controlled. He didn't smile when he saw me, but he gave a nod. That was enough. Estelle ran over before the game began. Mommy says we're moving soon, she said. Is that true? I crouched to her level. Not if I can help it. Julian doesn't like us talking to you. I felt something cold settle behind my ribs. He doesn't get to decide that, I said. He said we're a new family now. My hands tightened around the water bottle I was holding. Estelle, I said softly, no matter what anyone says, I'm your dad. Always. And nothing changes that. She looked up at me for a long moment, then reached out and hugged me tight, quick and urgent. Then she ran back to the sideline. I stood there swallowing hard. That evening, Raina sent me a draft for emergency mediation. The angle was clear. Sabine had exposed the children to a man under federal investigation, altered school records, and attempted to deny a legal parent access to his children. It wasn't full-blown war, not yet. But the gloves were off. That weekend, Leo called again. This time it wasn't about a game. Dad. Yeah, bud. Julian yelled at Estelle yesterday. I went completely still. What happened? She was drawing a picture of you and he said it was disrespectful. He told her you were dangerous, that you abandoned us. I closed my eyes. And what did your mom do? She just told him to calm down. My grip on the phone tightened. "You okay?" I asked. "I guess. He doesn't feel like family." There it was, the moment, the opening. You know, you can tell the school counselor anything, right? Or me, or anyone you trust. No one's allowed to treat you or Estelle like that. A pause. "Can I stay with you sometime?" "Soon," I said. "Very soon." After we hung up, I sent Raina a full summary. Her reply was immediate. "Now we go in hard. We filed a new motion Monday morning requesting temporary shared custody with immediate review of household safety." The motion cited Julian's legal trouble and included Estelle's testimony, Leo's school records, and footage from the soccer field showing physical proximity and familiarity. Sabine didn't respond directly, but her attorney sent a flurry of panicked emails that reeked of desperation. Then I got the notification I'd been waiting for court hearing date confirmed. 2 weeks. The night before the hearing, I stood outside their house one last time, not to stalk, not to watch, just to remember. The lights were on in the upstairs bedrooms. I imagined Estelle brushing her teeth, Leo sitting quietly on his bed, headphones on the weight of loyalty and confusion pressing down on him. Sabine had done her best to erase me, but she'd underestimated the truth, and the truth had a way of rising. I didn't sleep the night before the hearing. I lay in bed, eyes open, watching the dim slats of city light cut across my ceiling. My mind ran like a projector reel. Leo's voice saying, Julian yelled at Estelle. Estelle's arms around me at the soccer game, Sabine's venom on the phone. It all played back in a loop each moment, sharpening the edge of what was to come. I arrived at the courthouse early. Raina met me inside her usual black pantsuit, sharp as a blade. She handed me a printed packet, our final brief. "Everything's airtight," she said. "Any word from Sabine's side? They're scrambling." Her lawyer tried to stall. Denied, obviously. I gave a dry laugh. "Of course." Raina looked up at me steady. "Don't get emotional in there. Let them unravel first." We were called into the family courtroom, a modest space, not the grand halls you see in movies. The judge, a woman in her early 60s, wore sharp glasses and a measured gaze. Sabine sat across from me. Julian wasn't present. She looked smaller than usual. No camera-ready gloss. Her blazer was wrinkled. There were bags under her eyes. But still, she didn't look at me. The proceedings began with basic introductions. Then came Raina's opening. "Your Honor, we are here today on behalf of Mr. Mason Callahan, seeking joint custody and court review of household stability for his 2 children, Leo and Estelle Callahan. Mr. Callahan is a decorated Marine who has fulfilled his duties with honor and who, since returning from active duty, has made every effort to reconnect, support, and parent his children within legal and emotional bounds. In contrast, Ms. Sabine Callahan has not only obstructed this relationship, but exposed the children to an unstable domestic partner currently implicated in an ongoing federal investigation. This is not speculation. This is fact. And these children deserve better." The judge looked down at the file, then nodded. Sabine's lawyer rose. "Your Honor, we don't deny Mr. Callahan served this country with dignity, but he has not been present in these children's lives consistently, and his sudden reappearance, aggressive, demanding public, has caused confusion and distress. My client's partner, Mr. Julian Levesque, has no convictions or restraining orders. He is at this time only under review for civil infractions, none of which impact the children directly." Then Raina stood again. "May I direct the court's attention to Exhibit 4B testimony from Leo Callahan, age 11, stating that Mr. Levesque shouted at his younger sister and called Mr. Callahan dangerous. In the child's own words, He said Dad was a threat and told us to forget him. The children are afraid, and while the partner may have no convictions, Your Honor, the damage to these kids is very real. The judge raised an eyebrow. Where is Mr. Levesque today? Sabine's lawyer cleared his throat. Unavailable. Your Honor, traveling for work, I see. The court broke for recess after testimony from the counselor at Leo's school, who confirmed the boy's regression anxiety and confusion, particularly around his father's identity and value. The judge listened quietly, took notes, and didn't offer much reaction. Outside, Raina leaned close to me. We're winning this, but we need one more card, which is Sabine, under oath. Back inside, Raina requested that Sabine take the stand. Her lawyer objected. The judge overruled. Sabine's heels clicked nervously as she approached the stand. She adjusted her blouse, sat down, and took the oath with a stiff nod. Ms. Callahan Raina began gently. Do you consider Mr. Callahan a danger to your children? She hesitated. Not physically, but emotionally, yes. He's unpredictable. Cold. Yet he attended multiple soccer games, reached out respectfully, and never violated any court orders. Correct. Sabine's lips tightened. That doesn't change the past. What past are we referring to exactly? His military service? Sabine didn't answer. Did your children ever express fear of their father before Mr. Levesque entered their lives? No. And did Mr. Levesque ever tell them to reject their father? Sabine squirmed. He was trying to protect them from being hurt again. By insulting their father, by reminding them who's been here, not who showed up after a year. Raina didn't flinch. So it is your belief that military deployment renders a father disposable? Objection, her lawyer snapped. Sustained, said the judge. But the point had landed. Raina shifted tactics. Ms. Callahan, were you aware that Mr. Levesque's firm is under investigation for illegal evictions? Julian told me the claims were baseless. And did you independently verify that before moving him into a house with 2 children? A pause. No. No further questions. Sabine stepped down, visibly rattled. After closing statements, the judge did something unexpected. I will render my full ruling in writing by the end of next week, she said. However, given the immediate concerns raised, I am granting Mr. Callahan temporary joint physical custody, effective immediately, with alternating weeks and equal decision-making authority. Sabine's mouth dropped open. The gavel came down. The courtroom emptied. And I stood there, not triumphant, but steady. Raina and I walked out into the Los Angeles air, the sun harsh against the pavement. I exhaled, long and slow. We did it, I said. We did a piece of it, she replied. But don't relax. This isn't over. I nodded. I know. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You're going to regret this. I showed it to Raina. She shrugged. She's bluffing. She has nothing left. But something in the tone lingered. That weekend, Leo and Estelle stayed with me. I made pancakes Saturday morning. Estelle asked for chocolate chips. Leo sat at the kitchen counter, quiet, but present. They were kids again, not props in a war zone, not pawns in a custody game. Later that day, Estelle asked me if we could hang her drawings in my office. Of course, I said. Which one? All of them. Leo smiled faintly. We built a fort out of couch cushions that night, watched an old movie, ate popcorn. Sabine hadn't texted once. No interruptions, no manipulations. But I didn't let my guard down. Tuesday morning, Raina called me. I just got word from a friend in the DA's office, she said. Julian's being indicted. My stomach dropped. For what wire fraud, land manipulation, something about ghost permits and offshore transfers. He'll be in court next month. Does Sabine know she will? And we wait. Quietly. Let her burn the last of her bridges on her own. Wednesday. Leo came home from school holding a project folder. Dad, can you help me with this? I looked at the heading Family Tree. My throat tightened. Of course, I said. We sat down at the table and began to sketch it out. When we got to the dad section, he didn't hesitate. He wrote my name in bold letters. Mason Callahan. Below that, decorated Marine. Best pancake maker. He looked up at me and grinned, and I realized in that moment no court ruling or threat could ever take this back. I was home, and they were with me. The knock at my door came at 7:15 a.m., just as I was pouring Leo's orange juice. Estelle was still upstairs brushing her hair, humming to herself. The morning had been quiet, peaceful until that sound. I opened the door to find two men in suits. Badges. Department of Justice. Mr. Callahan, yes. We'd like to speak with you regarding Julian Levesque. My heart didn't race. I didn't panic. Instead, I stepped aside and let them in. Estelle peeked down from the stairs. Daddy, it's okay, honey. Just some guests. Go finish up. Raina had warned me this might happen. Julian's indictment wasn't a clean-cut, white-collar case. There were offshore accounts, dummy permits, and intimidation of tenants. As it turned out, he'd also used Sabine's business license to funnel certain documents, probably without her knowledge. Probably. The agents asked me questions about whether I'd ever received funds, whether I knew about the leases. I answered everything honestly. I was clean. They left within 30 minutes. I called Raina the second they walked out. They're moving fast, she said. That visit means Julian's defense is unraveling. He'll throw anyone under the bus to save himself. Even Sabine. Especially Sabine. 2 days later, the internet exploded. A video leaked Julian shouting at a tenant in a rundown LA apartment complex. The woman's voice was shaking, and Julian's threats were clear. If you don't leave by Friday, we'll make sure the plumbing fails again. The clip spread like wildfire. Raina called me at midnight, her voice alive with urgency. It's over. This is the nail in his coffin. And Sabine, she'll deny involvement. But the license attached to the maintenance order was hers. I stared at the ceiling. She's going to lose everything, isn't she? She's going to lose the narrative. That's worse for someone like her. Sabine called the next morning. I let it ring. She tried again. I answered. What do you want, Sabine? There was no venom in my voice, just fatigue. I don't know, she said softly. They came to the house. DOJ. She nodded, I imagined. I didn't know Mason. I swear to God I didn't know what he was doing. I remained quiet. He used me, used my signature, my name. My kids live here, how could he? Her voice cracked. I was stupid. No, I said flatly. You were proud. You wanted someone who didn't carry the scent of war, who dressed better, talked slicker. You wanted a man who wouldn't remind you of the years you felt ignored. That's not fair, isn't it? The silence lingered like smoke. Can I see the kids? She finally asked. You'll need to go through the court. Mason, come on. Don't be like this. I'm being exactly like this. For once. The fallout was brutal. Julian was arrested. Charges: fraud, coercion, harassment, falsifying housing records. More tenants came forward. News stations ran photos of Sabine and Julian at galas, calling her his unwitting accomplice or his glamorous face. Her reputation collapsed. Sponsors dropped her. Her podcast paused indefinitely. I should have felt satisfied. Instead, I felt hollow. It wasn't that I wanted her to suffer. It was that I needed her to understand, not just the consequences, but the cost. Leo and Estelle had stopped asking about her, not out of anger, but out of quiet confusion. Children instinctively retreat from instability. Their silences said more than any tantrum. One night, Estelle crawled into my bed and whispered, "Are we going to have to move again?" "No, sweetheart. We're home." She paused. "Even if Mommy's mad. Even then." Raina filed for permanent joint custody with a motion to designate primary residency under my roof. Sabine didn't contest it. Maybe because she couldn't. Maybe because she finally saw what I saw the look in Leo's eyes when he leaned into me after school, the way Estelle giggled again during dinner. One morning, I found a crumpled envelope in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was a letter. From Sabine. It read, "Mason, I know I've lost your trust, and maybe even the kids' respect. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know. I see it now. All of it. I was lonely when you were gone. I was scared. Not just of war, but of coming second to it. Julian made me feel important, like I mattered, but it was a lie. You've always been stronger than me. Even when you were broken, you held on. I didn't. I ran. I hope someday our children know who you really are. Not just a Marine, not just their dad, but the man who stood when it would have been easier to fall. S." I sat on the porch for hours after reading it. Then I burned it. Not out of anger, but because I didn't need her words to define my story. Raina called with more news. Julian accepted a plea deal. 3 years minimum, justice close enough. And Sabine, no charges. But they've frozen her accounts. So what now? Raina exhaled. Now you live. Quietly. Cleanly. You won. I didn't feel victorious in the dramatic, movie-ending kind of way. There was no applause, no confetti, just quiet mornings. A full fridge, 2 pairs of shoes by the door. One day Leo came into my office holding a school flyer. "Dad, there's a father-son camping trip in May. Can we go?" My chest tightened. "Of course," he nodded. Julian never liked camping. "I do," he grinned. That night we packed gear together. Tent, flashlights. Estelle snuck granola bars into our duffel bag. Sabine hadn't called in over a month. She still lived across town in a condo she rented under her maiden name. Her Instagram was quiet. No more posed brunch photos, just occasional quotes about growth silence and learning to start over. I hoped she meant it, but I wasn't waiting for proof. One Sunday, Leo pulled a wrinkled page from his backpack. It was a writing prompt. "A person who inspires me." He handed it to me shyly. It read, "My dad inspires me because he never gave up. Even when my mom said he couldn't see us. Even when he didn't know where we lived. Even when people lied about him. He kept showing up. He doesn't yell. He listens. He makes pancakes on Sundays and teaches me how to fix stuff. When I grow up, I want to be like him." Leo Callahan. I folded the page carefully and tucked it into my wallet, right next to my veteran's ID. I think the hardest part of coming home isn't the silence. It's learning how to live in it again, how to listen to laughter without suspecting the worst, how to let yourself love people who once broke you, how to forgive without forgetting. That spring, I stood in the crowd as Leo scored his first goal of the season. Estelle was on my shoulders, cheering. Raina clapped beside me. In the distance, I spotted Sabine. She was alone, far from the other parents. She didn't wave. Neither did I. But she saw the kids happy free whole, and maybe that was enough. Raina knocked once before stepping into my office. The sun was just starting to dip behind the glass towers of Century City, bathing everything in a warm, honeyed light. I looked up from my desk where Estelle's crayon drawing was pinned beside a court motion, two worlds I'd fought hard to keep from colliding. They've set the final custody hearing, Raina said, no preamble. It's next Thursday. I leaned back, exhaling slowly. You think she'll contest? No, she said, sitting down. I think Sabine's finished fighting for things she knows she's already lost. There was no gloating in her tone, just precision. Raina had walked with me through every mile of this legal war, one measured not just in court dates, but in silent dinners, children's questions, and the ache of trying to rewrite a life while still living it. She hasn't seen them in 6 weeks, I said. She sends emails, Raina replied. But they don't respond. I didn't push them. Estelle didn't even ask anymore. Leo occasionally scrolled through old photos of them, all at the beach, his face unreadable. Children develop their own compass for trust. Mine had. So had theirs. When the day of the hearing came, it was raining. The kind of spring drizzle that blurred the city skyline and made the roads slick with regret. Sabine showed up alone. No attorney, no entourage. She wore a gray suit, 2 sizes too loose, her hair pulled back in a tight bun. She looked older, thinner, like someone who'd been living inside an echo chamber for too long. Raina nodded to me as we entered. She's not fighting you. This is just a formality now. Still, my heart beat a little faster as we sat. The judge looked over the paperwork. Reviewed the children's counselor reports, the school records, photos, financials, and then he asked Sabine directly, "Do you have any objections to Mr. Callahan retaining primary custody of Leo and Estelle?" She looked at me, then down at her lap. "No, Your Honor." That was it. After 9 years of marriage, 2 children, a military career, an affair, a betrayal, and a collapse, it came down to 2 syllables. No. The gavel hit. Custody granted. I was the legal custodial parent. She'd have supervised visitation if and when deemed appropriate by the court. Outside the courthouse, she caught up to me. "Mason." I stopped. "Please don't." She swallowed. "I just wanted to say thank you." "For what?" "For not turning them against me." I studied her, this version of Sabine that had been scraped raw by her own ambition, her own choices. "I didn't have to," I said quietly. "You did that yourself." She blinked back something, tears maybe, and nodded. And then she walked away. That weekend, Leo helped me set up the new bookshelf in the living room. Raina had found it online, a solid oak piece we'd been meaning to install since we moved in. Dad Leo said, lining up the drill, "Do you think Mom misses us?" I didn't lie. "Yes, but missing someone doesn't always mean they know how to fix what they broke." He tightened the screw slowly. "I don't hate her. I just don't trust her anymore." I placed my hand on his shoulder. "That's fair." He nodded. "You never left." That night, Estelle crawled into bed again. "You think Mommy's sad. I think she's sad for herself more than for us." She blinked at me. "You're not sad." I smiled faintly. I was. But sometimes you have to let sad things go so new things can grow. She hugged me hard and didn't say another word. A month later, Julian's sentencing was made public. 32 months in federal prison. A fine of $280,000. Permanent ban from real estate development in the state of California. Sabine's name came up during the trial, but was never formally attached to the criminal charges. Still, her businesses crumbled. Her podcast lost its final sponsor. She moved again, this time to a modest apartment in Silver Lake. Raina forwarded me an email from Sabine's former publicist. Apparently she's taking a sabbatical from the public eye, she said. Translation hiding, I muttered. Raina raised an eyebrow. You still angry? No, I replied. I just don't respect her anymore. And that's worse. One day in late June, I received an envelope in the mail. Inside was a single photo, Leo and Estelle smiling with Santa Claus from years ago. On the back was a handwritten note. I'm working on being better. I don't expect a seat at your table, Mason. I just hope someday they'll let me stand near it. It wasn't signed, but I recognized her handwriting. I put it in the drawer and locked it. Some bridges don't burn, they just fade. Raina and I never defined our relationship. She was my attorney, then my friend, then someone who showed up with soup when I was sick and helped Estelle with her science project at midnight. One evening she stayed for dinner. After the kids were asleep, we sat on the porch. You ever think about going back? She asked. To the core numb, to being someone's husband again. I looked at her. She wasn't asking for herself. She was asking if I believed I could love again without fearing betrayal. Maybe I said, but this time I won't be invisible. She clinked her wine glass to mine. Good. You never were. That summer we went camping. Leo carried the map. Estelle brought a stuffed raccoon named Peanut. I taught them how to make a fire. We made s'mores, told ghost stories, laughed under the stars. I watched them sleep in the tent, curled together like they used to be before everything changed. And I realized I hadn't just rebuilt my life. I'd reclaimed it. When school resumed in the fall, Leo wrote an essay titled The Bravest Person I Know. He wrote about how real bravery isn't loud. It doesn't wear medals or shout in courtrooms. It's showing up when it's hard. It's saying no when others want you to stay silent. It's loving your kids enough to stay put even when the world falls apart. I didn't cry, but my hands shook as I folded that paper and placed it beside the one he wrote last spring. I ran into Sabine one last time. It was at a bookstore downtown. She was browsing the parenting aisle. We made eye contact. She offered a hesitant smile. I gave her a nod and walked away. No words, no need. Because some stories don't end with justice or revenge. They end with peace, earned, quiet, undeniable. And that was more than enough. The fall semester had ended with both Leo and Estelle acing their final projects. Leo built a small robot arm from scratch, and Estelle presented a clay sculpture she called Still Standing. When I asked her why she chose that name, she shrugged and said, because it didn't fall even when I thought it would. I had to step into the hallway and take a breath after that. Our home had become steady, not perfect, not always smooth, but grounded. We weren't rebuilding a broken life anymore, we were living a new one. And perhaps that was the most remarkable part, that peace didn't arrive with a bang. It came quietly, gradually, like sunlight stretching into a dark room. Sabine hadn't requested visitation since the ruling. The last I heard, she had moved again, this time to Nevada. Julien was still serving his time, though he occasionally made headlines for poor conduct. His fall from grace was as rapid as his rise, typical of men who confuse charisma with character. I didn't speak of them. The kids didn't ask anymore. One Saturday morning, Raina dropped by with bagels and that smile that never demanded anything from me, but always offered calm. I'm taking a leave, she said, as we sipped coffee on the back deck. A leave. 3 months, no caseload, no courtrooms, just breathing room. I raised an eyebrow. Since when do you breathe? She laughed softly. Since I realized I've been holding my breath for a decade. There was a pause. Then she added, I thought maybe we could go somewhere. The thought should have made me anxious. Packing up, leaving the house, disrupting the routine we'd worked so hard to create. But it didn't. Where I asked. Anywhere the phones don't ring. I looked out across the yard. Leo was kicking a soccer ball against the fence. Estelle was sketching something on the patio, both of them still standing. Let me ask the board, I joked, and Raina smiled. We left in early February, a cabin in Big Sur. Just us, the kids, and the kind of silence that lets you hear yourself think again. One night, after Estelle had fallen asleep, and Leo was deep into a book, Raina and I sat by the fire. You ever think about what forgiveness really means? I asked. She turned to me. Letting go of needing an apology. Maybe. Or accepting that you'll never get the version of justice you imagined, but being okay anyway. She didn't respond immediately. Then, you've done more than survive, Mason. You rebuilt from ashes and didn't become ash yourself. That was the hardest part. You know what the kids say about you? I raised an eyebrow. They say you're unshakable. I smiled faintly. Not true. Maybe not. But you made them believe it. Back in LA, I got a call from Sabine's former friend, the one who had helped her with PR years ago. Off the record, she said Sabine's trying to write a book. About what? About consequences. Choices. Women's voices. She wants to paint herself as misunderstood. I didn't respond. She says you were too controlling, that the marriage stifled her. Still, I said nothing. She's going to fail, the woman added flatly. People don't believe her anymore. She lost the room. I almost laughed. I'm not worried about a book. You're really not going to respond. No, I said. I already wrote the ending. I just chose to live it instead of publish it. That summer, Leo was accepted into a tech mentorship program. Estelle submitted one of her paintings to a local competition and placed second. We had dinner together every night. No phones, no distractions, just stories, laughter, and a rhythm that no longer needed repairing. Raina eventually returned to work part-time. I shifted my schedule to make time for the kids, the house, and myself. The guilt that used to gnaw at me about what I'd lost, what I could have done differently, was gone. Not because I forgot, but because I finally forgave myself. One night, Leo asked me, "Would you ever get married again?" I looked at him. Honest eyes. Not accusing, just curious. Maybe. But it would have to feel like breathing, not battling. He nodded thoughtfully. That makes sense. Estelle chimed in from across the table. If you do, she has to like dogs. We all laughed. Later that year, I stood in front of a group of veterans invited to speak about resilience. I told them the truth, that war changes you, that betrayal doesn't have to come from bullets, that sometimes the deepest wounds are the ones no one sees until they scar, and that healing isn't about winning court battles or proving someone wrong. It's about standing back up without permission. The final chapter of this story wasn't about revenge or punishment. It was about presence. Leo and Estelle flourished. Julienne faded from memory. Sabine disappeared into her own echo. And me, I became a man I would have respected back when I was broken. That's the real victory. Not applause, not headlines, but peace that needs no validation. And a life real, flawed, honest, lived fully. Sometimes life doesn't fall apart all at once. It unravels quietly. Through a text. A silence, a door that stays closed. And in that quiet unraveling, something inside us breaks. But here's the truth. Most people don't talk about the breaking is not the end. It's the beginning of choosing who you become after. Healing isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just showing up for yourself every morning when no one else will. It's protecting your peace without asking for permission. It's realizing you don't need revenge or validation, just clarity, just freedom. And sometimes the most powerful justice isn't about punishment. It's about living so fully, so steadily, that no lie, no betrayal, no abandonment can define you again. You don't need everyone to believe your story. You just need to live a life that no one can take away. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If this story moved, you reminded you of a time you had to rise through pain, or gave you hope for what's possible after heartbreak, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, because more stories like this are waiting, and you won't want to miss what comes next.